What a journey it's been. This project went from November 4th, 2024 to January 11th, 2025, building the entirety of my first fully finished model railroad in just 2 months, just in time to exhibit at the yearly local train show. Except it wasn't quite in time. Thunderduck was only operational the day of the show, around 1 in the morning. The trees we ordered to finish the forest had yet to arrive, and the mine building wasn't complete as the show began. Doors opened 5 minutes early, and in came the crowds. Was the layout ready? Not even close. Was I? Absolutely. We made it in one piece. Well, 2 pieces. My father brought his N-scale layout for kids to run trains on, after all. This is the first train show my father and I have exhibited in since COVID lockdowns, and it was a blast. Since our entire setup was so small, we got an excellent spot in the show. We are positioned kind of near the center, right on the edge of the big layouts and the sales floor. In fact, in the first 10 minutes of the show, I overheard somebody say, "That's the layout I saw on YouTube," which just, my heart, man. Sadly, this person didn't stop by and say hello. However, this does have a hilarious side effect, because the first person who actually did stop by and say hello passed by my layout 7 times. It is called the Little Loop for a reason, eh? That person was Cammy, and I'm not going to lie, this train show would have been a bit of a headache if it weren't for her showing up. My father and I were able to handle both of our layouts individually, but sometimes we had to use the bathroom, sometimes we needed a lunch break, sometimes we just wanted to browse the show ourselves. One person juggling 2 layouts at a time was not easy. So you can imagine how enthralled I was when Cammy showed up early into the show and stuck around for the full 6 hours both days. That was a very welcome lifeline, and hilariously, not the only one. Another fan of the channel who happened to be a fellow exhibitor at this show didn't actually realize I was at this show. Which is all the more hilarious because when they asked, "Wait, did you make this layout?" they asked Cammy, not me. Travis, aka Lazy Bubs, was part of a club that had limited mainline capacity, and so club members signed up for certain time slots to run their trains. Because of this, Travis was a frequent sight at the Little Loop, to such a point that you could easily mistake him for being one of my volunteers, and in a way you wouldn't be far off. Including Travis and Cammy, I overheard or talked directly to 7 people who actually recognized the layout from YouTube. Based on vibes though, I think there were about 3 to 5 additional people who didn't say anything and just oogled at the layout. That might not sound like much at first, but for a channel of my size and a random train show off the beaten path, I am very happy with those numbers. For the crowds that had never heard of the Little Loop though, I actually got to strike up some pretty good conversations. My father got to introduce me to a few of his friends, though hilariously, one of them actually did know about the Little Loop, and I got to meet a good amount of fellow ON30 fans in the region. One of which I actually met again at a recent swap meet, and they had a 3x4 foot layout of their own. I don't know how much I directly inspired them, but it was very nice to see somebody else trying their hand at a micro layout. That was so exciting. Though, speaking of which, someone remind me to shoot them an email. I keep meaning to, but putting it off because I just get distracted easily. I think one of the most interesting things that I observed is that everyone seemed to love Peppermint and Snickerdoodle. Personally, I really enjoyed running Thunderduck, but that's probably because of how weird she is and how recently she was completed. After all, she was finished the day of the show. People really seemed to love the names on the trenchies, though, especially children. You should have seen how many of the kids saw the sweets, either on their own or because of their parents, and just such a special look in their eyes. As the show progressed, I really started prioritizing those locomotives thanks to their popularity. The other quote-unquote interaction that I had with the general public was a little pamphlet for people to take that talked a little bit about my locomotives. Each pamphlet talked a little bit about the prototype locomotives and my experience with the actual models that I built of them. They also included custom art of every locomotive from Benefactor Radio Isotopics. I had a blast writing it up. In case you didn't know, I love writing. If I wasn't a YouTuber, I'd probably look into a job as a blogger, a journalist, or maybe a novelist. It was nice exercising that part of my brain with this pamphlet. The pamphlet, however, actually wound up damaging one of my trains. Since I brought 5 locomotives, Snickerdoodle, Peppermint, Thunderduck, Old Trusty, and Annabelle, there wasn't really enough space to fit all of them on the little loop at one given time, so there was always at least 2 locomotives on the sidelines. The problem is, I had a sign for those pamphlets that simply said, "Take one! I can print out more. Please take a pamphlet." But as I kept swapping out the locomotive roster on the little loop, the locomotives got close enough to the sign that eventually somebody thought "take one" meant take one of the locomotives. Now, the good news is, we realized this mistake very early on and they didn't actually take a locomotive. The bad news is the locomotive they were trying to take was Annabelle, the Shay. Now, Annabelle is a locomotive that I wasn't able to really fully get running by this show. She has electrical pickup issues that I was looking to remedy with a Keep Alive or a Current Keeper. However, because I was still trying to figure out how to do this when the show began, her fuel tank was not attached. It was completely unscrewed. So when the person picked her up, the fuel tank fell down and onto another train. Specifically, onto one of the Owen 18 gondolas. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to use that as a gondola anymore. The frame survived, but the gondola sides did not. So, sadly, the Owen 18 train has been damaged a little. Fortunately, we were able to just take a pen and clarify that take the pamphlets, not the trains. Now, the layout wasn't finished. Obviously, the trees didn't show up, but I also kinda didn't finish the mine. I got it to a point where most people either didn't notice or didn't care that it was unfinished, but, man, it hurt to have it not be completely complete. The shaft's pulley wasn't painted, the hoist house didn't have any doors, it didn't have any connection to the pulley or the mine shaft, and the tipple was missing the actual tipples, and it was built at a weird angle due to having to complete this at the last minute. Yeah, at this point, this isn't even the 12th hour mine, this is the 13th hour mine. I have been procrastinating finishing this project for an ungodly amount of time. With that said, I did get a couple of things done at the show. Cammy showed up while I was painting the roof. And I, forgot to make sure to have water on hand so that I could clean my paintbrush. Fortunately, Cammy was more than willing to help with that and ran off to grab me a plastic cup. That, plus Cammy walking past the layout 7 times, was a comical way to be introduced to somebody. Something kind of funny happened at the show. I bought trains, but I didn't buy ON30. If you've known me from before I actually started posting model trains to YouTube, which, let's be fair, you probably don't, I love N-scale. I've loved it since about 2008. And my favorite thing to do is to model modern-era short-line railroads that have occasional excursion trains run by steam locomotives. So on the first day of the show, when I found a DCC Sound Bachmann 460 for only $125, you know I had to pick it up. On the second day, I was able to pick up some modern freight cars. 3 covered hoppers, and 2 boxcars. And, as you might notice there, another locomotive. This time, a Bachmann 44-tonner with digital command control. For only $10. I don't think I can ever beat that price. Overall, this show was amazing. The Little Loop being a project that I could only work on for 2 months was very stressful, but it paid off so well in the end. It was a blast meeting so many people. It was a blast completing my first model railroad. Well, okay, mostly completing. I met a lot of cool people, and I legitimately think this is the best thing that has happened to me in 6, 8, maybe even 10 years. Thank you all for such an awesome time. Cheers, folks.